All right, all right. We about 15 minutes early for next Seed Talk. We back. We gonna take some time for some people to get in the room. A Seed Talk stuff that makes you seeds walk. Bobby, Trisha, and Precious. Talk stuff that makes you seeds walk. Bobby. Okay, someone's got their computer on. Violation.
It would have
Party
made
foul, podcast foul.
anyway.
We're gonna let some people get in the room. Let's start tagging some people right now. Um, I say this almost every single time, and I think we're gonna have an episode that's gonna be a little spicy for a lot of people, and it's gonna be a little controversial and whatnot. And we're not scared of that because me being in education, I know a lot of people are going through this, just seeing families and whatnot. And I see a lot of families raising other people's children. And sometimes those children, what I'm saying, are black and the parents are white. Whether it's the foster care system or it's the adoption care system. Like I was watching it, a couple things came up. First thing that came up was the Colin Kaepernick docu-series. I thought it was, it was a little Disney, what I'm saying? But I thought it served its purpose. I thought it was well played. I liked it. I could identify with a lot of stuff growing up in white neighborhoods, but I couldn't identify because I wasn't raised by white people. I was raised by black people in an affluent white neighborhood for quite a number of years, like maybe 3 or 4 years in Issaquah, Washington. But I seen a lot of the challenges, that his white, adoption parents had. And then I seen Madonna's children, what I'm saying? And, we're seeing a lot of white people, specifically white celebrities or white people with money adopting black or brown children and children of African descent. And I know what I'm about to say is going to come off like really insensitive and real funny, but I got to say this, man, because I'm going to keep it real with you. I was looking at the picture of Madonna and her children, man, and one of her children's knees was ashy, man. And I'm just going to keep it real with you. That bothered me. I know it sounds funny because ashy in itself in the black community it's funny. It's funny. And I laughed at first. I made a comment to myself when I seen it on my timeline, but I was like, man, that's a form of neglect. I mean, you going to a photo shoot and you're not going to, have enough cultural awareness to grease this child's knees up and their elbows. But then, that also, plays a part with the hair too. Like we get a lot of white parents that, no, there's nothing wrong with the natural look. But I'm saying they're just not even cleaning the hair, though. They're not cleaning the hair. There's nothing wrong with natural nappy hair. But it's evident that their style is no style or they don't know how to do the style and they think that's okay. And my thing is, I can ride with the argument that's a form. I can see how people can say that's a form of abuse. It's a form of neglect. If you know that your child needs a certain level of attention and given a certain level of awareness to survive in this world, or else it can have problematic outcomes. I would say that's a form of neglect, and a form of neglect is a form of abuse, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get in the courtroom right now. But I just see a lot of white parents adopting children, black children, and just thinking that, hey, kind of like the Colin Kaepernick thing, like, we're giving them a place to live. We're the white saviors, and that's enough. We're protecting and providing. And a lot of times the protecting and the providing means we're protecting them from the mistreatment of their black family, and we're providing what they can. That's what I'm seeing sometimes. I'm not saying I'm seeing that all the time. What I'm saying is there's a reason why there is a predominantly a large amount of Black parents that want to adopt that aren't eligible to adopt children that look like them. And so, Trisha, before we even, dig deep into this other thing, was just really talking about, man, like, we got to start at the root. There's racism within the adoption process. And I wanted her to, build on that while we tag some people. So go ahead and build on that.
Well, within the system, there's racism. The overwhelming majority of the social workers that are involved in the adoption and foster care process are white, normally white women, and they don't necessarily have a metric that examines completely what a Black child would need in a home. So these things like, health care, which as she needs, all those things, those aren't things that are evaluated in the initial placement, which should be, because it should be about the complete child, their mental, physical, financial, and social well-being. They tend to focus on the financial and possibly the situation of the parents or their relationship. They concentrate on those things, but they ignore the rest. There was recently, I guess, they discovered these problems in terms of like Black children being removed overwhelmingly from their homes at a higher rate in Los Angeles. And now what they're trying to do is have like blind removals. So not mentioning the race of the child when they're in court, and seeing if that will have a different result, because the overwhelming majority of the kids that are removed are Black. We're more likely, our children than any other race, if they're removed from their home, they're more likely not to be returned to the parents. And that's barring all other variables. Black kids in 2018 only made up like 13.7% of the population, and yet 22% were in foster care. So it should be similar, but it's not. And as long as we ignore these other variables, the fact that our children are being placed overwhelmingly with white families, while there are Black parents, single as well as in relationships, that are willing to adopt, but the hoops that you have to go through because they focus on that financial and relationship status, that's inequity. That's a systemic inequity that needs to be addressed. And too often I've found that, when our children are placed with white parents, and then they realize that, okay, we need to worry about things like their hair and stuff, then they're looking for free advice from the same Black community and feel, oh, can you tell me things that they should have done before versus after the fact.
You make a good point, because that could be a whole franchise of consulting agencies within the Black community, rooted in the Black community, where these white adopted parents can come to pay, to learn how to, properly raise that child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
Bobby,
too often with things like hair, I've had plenty come up to me. They'll see my hair and oh, can you do my kid's hair for me? Can you show me how to? And I'm like, I'm doing something else. I'm not here to be your personal genie to show you what you should have learned before. So why are you asking me to do this for free?
There will be someone that will be like, why are we charging white people money and getting paid on how to treat Black children? There'll always be someone to say that, but
because when our kids want to do something, like if my kid wanted to play soccer, I had to learn, I didn't know how to play soccer. I paid someone to teach him. So why is just because we're Black, there's an exemption? If my kid wanted to learn how to clog it, when I wanted to learn how to fencing is not part of my culture. My parents paid someone to teach me how to fence. So, we're not exempt from.
Good point. We definitely be paying hand over fist, paying white people to teach us how to be indoctrinated and, integrate into their systems. I wanted to hit up Bobby real quick, because he got a very interesting perspective, and I'm gonna let him speak on why his perspective is so unique. But I wanted to ask you a question real quick. Did you ever have a problem being raised by a white mother of like her taking care of your hair or cultural awareness or just cultural keep?
I always had issues with my aunts and uncles, not my mom.
Got you.
My mom was more liberal than my dad. And my dad used to say that she was liberal the way that she was because she was white. So she didn't understand some of the conservatism that I was raised with. So, like, for example, if I would have wanted to do dreadlocks in middle school or something, my dad would have been like, no, because I don't like the way people look at black folks with dreadlocks. And he would be like, and I know that because I'm a police officer, right? And my mom would be like, it's just hair. And my dad would be like, yeah, it is just hair for white people. And that dichotomy of, okay, one person appears to be very liberal, but they're liberal because their life experience, it's not educating them on the consequences of something, was kind of a theme throughout my life. And then as I got older and my dad started to be like, okay, now you're an adult, do what you want to do. My dad was like, he had dreads, he had braids, as an adult. So he was like, do what you want. But then my aunts and uncles would start to comment and they would say slick shit to me. Like one of them texted my mom after I had passed the bar and I had an afro at the time, and they were like, is Bobby going to cut his hair now? And, the implication was that I'm not hireable if I have long hair. And that upset me.
Be, though.
Huh?
You might not be. Seriously.
And that's fine. But my position is that, one, I'm not your magical Negro.
Right. I get it. Yeah.
Just like the rest of the niggas out there. That's what I always wanted to say. I always wanted to say that. And I always didn't out of respect for my mother, not out of respect for my dad. I did that out of respect for my mother because I never wanted her to feel alienated around them. But the aunts and uncles who would make comments about, when I have braids, wearing a do-rag, or it told me what they thought about people like me that weren't me. And that's what I took from it. And so it made me really look at those people as like, yeah, I'm related to them, but I don't trust them to treat my friends well. I don't trust them to treat people like me that they don't know well. Even my yellow behind, and I'm just yellow. So I could just imagine the friends that I had with darker skin, with different texture, with even more coarse hair. I could only imagine what their thoughts were when they saw those people. So I really just had an indictment on all of those people as soon as I saw those messages. And it changed my relationship with them, frankly. So I did have problems. I have problems with it.
Yeah.
I ended up sending people long text messages about, the Zulu tribe and length of hair and how this stuff has meant something to Black people for centuries, for hundreds of years.
White people too.
Like this stuff has been more than hair for a long time for a lot of people. So yeah, I've had issues with it.
Yeah, we want to get back because you informed me. I didn't even know that you're going through an adoption process, and so I want to come back to that. But I do want to get to Precious, man, because Precious said she had a personal story to talk about also. Precious, you there? Oh, you.
My bad. I thought you were still talking to Bobby. Okay. But yeah.
No, you said you had a personal story to share about the adoption process.
My nurse that was prepping me for my first surgery. This is now 2-3 years, going on 3 years ago. As she was prepping me for my surgery, like things I need to do, things I have to, medication I have to take or whatever to have a successful surgery. I noticed on her phone it was a Black baby or maybe biracial. And I said, "Oh, so that's your baby?" And she's like, "Yes, it is." And and she was showing me all the pictures on her phone, all the baby. It's like a happy baby. But I then saw that her husband was white. I was like, what's going on here? I said, what's going on here?
The math.
I did. I said, what's going on here? And that's she adopted him. And I looked at her even deeper. I'm like, you and your husband, this white man in the photo, y'all adopted a black child. And said, yes, we did. I'm like, why? I did say why. And she told me, long story short, it was a long story she told me, but long story short, she couldn't have children. She had an issue. I keep forgetting what that, Trisha, you probably know it started with an E. I can't pronounce it.
Endometriosis.
Yes, that's what it is right there. And she couldn't have kids. At the time, I think she was like 5-6 years older than me. But anyway, so they went through the system. I guess they didn't go necessarily through the foster care. I think they went another thing. I think it's a difference between adoption and foster care. So they went through the adoption services agency or whatever. And they kept trying to get a child. And it always fell through. Like, I guess they get outbid by the other parent or whoever. I'm not sure how that works, but apparently you say you want this child, and they tell you if you were able to get the child, you're not. So it was going on for 2 years, she said, until one day she came to work, and there was this child who was about to be sent for adoption, and that child just happened to. It was a black child. She said she saw, and she said, "Can I adopt this child?" And she was like, and I like, you didn't have a problem with it being black? She said, no, I just wanted a baby. So she said she called her husband. He came up to the hospital. He looked at and said, we'll take him. We want him. So they went through all the paperwork. She said it was a loan service, and the price that they paid, this almost made my eyes open. They paid $25,000 in order to adopt that child.
Well, that's another aspect of.
I know that, but I'm just saying, like.
Well, I'm just saying that I feel like that is another aspect, another arm of the institutional racism that exists. Yeah, in a form of privilege.
And I asked, I was looking at the picture. I'm like, is that child happy with y'all? And they said, yeah. I said, how did your family? I said, well, how your family took it?
Well, yeah, we can get to that. I wouldn't. The reason why I made that face is because how do we know?
Yeah, I just looked at picture.
I think when I'm a child, what made me happy at that
time
is very superficial, and it changed as an adult.
Right.
Feel me? What made me happy is if I had a nice supply of the newest G.I. Joes and, you know what I'm saying, Matchbox cars, and I had my electric football game, and those things made me happy. But as I got older as an adult, it was the things that had no material value but had intellectual or emotional value that meant the most to me.
Yeah,
and those were things, for the most part, even though I was around white people for a considerable part of my life, you know, enough. I can honestly say that the things that give me the most eternal happiness and peace did not come from white people at all. It came from Black people, my family, people that look like me. And that stuff is gold to me. It will never spoil. And they made me the best version of who I am. But my thing is this, Bobby, did you want to say something real quick?
I have a question for you. I think we'll build on it. You mentioned that you grew up in a Black family in an affluent white neighborhood for a considerable amount of time.
Well, I just want to say that was probably about 3-4 years of my life in Issaquah. And then the other parts were in Cleveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, and then in Seattle, you know, as I became a young adult, you know. But go ahead.
I guess the question I'm asking is, do you think that part of the reason why the things that you valued most didn't have material value were because you were in a situation where you could afford material, things? a lot of times people just value what they don't have access to. So you
I didn't
don't.
have access to material things like that. I probably had more access than the average Black family. I'm never going to be the one to deny my privilege that I had. Yeah, in the regular scheme of things in the Black community in Cleveland and Cincinnati, well, not so much in Cleveland. It was rough, but in Cincinnati it was rough. But the Crawford Lumpkin family was above average in our Black community, without a doubt. We were established because we were educators, we were factory workers, we were established in the community. Absolutely.
Okay. That's good.
I come from a very culture, a very privileged, earned privilege Black family. I will say that. Okay. We were definitely above average. I come from educators and factory workers and I came. Yeah,
I wasn't trying to G check you. I was just
no. I was just trying to be. I'm just trying to be completely honest,
transparent.
Okay. You know how some people are like, yeah, I grew up rough. I did until I didn't.
I get that
because I had a foundation. Mm-hmm. I went to public and private schools. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I got shot at, but I talked my way out of a lot more, situations that I didn't. I think that I'm one of the ideal models of a Black man, as so are you. You know what I'm saying? As so is, Trish and I share a lot of common experiences. Actually, all three of us that are left on the screen, like, I think Trish might have, either taught at a private school or went to a private school too, right?
Whole life, not whole life. First through 12th grade private school.
From the same club.
Girls' school too.
Up from the same club. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna wait for Trisha to get back. We're gonna keep it rolling though. But I want to ask a question. You got something else, Bobby?
No. I just because of like what you just said, us having some level of commonalities in being relatively privileged within the Black community, right? Like sometimes I wonder if our experience is like out there in the standard deviation in the 0025. Like, is it that far out there? Are we like out on the edge or no? That's because that's how people brand us as a community, right? Like everybody, that's how people talk about it. So.
Nah, we talk like people's parents or somebody's parents.
We weren't the only ones at our schools. Come on.
Absolutely, man.
There were lots.
We talk, and I'm not trying to disrespect anyone's family, but y'all know what we talk about. We talk like that family member who's always on that, but we can do it. That's how we talk. Yeah, but we can do it though. And there's some family members like, yeah, we can, but we're the family members to be like, yeah, we can do it. One thing they can't take away from you is your what? Knowledge. We're those family members. One thing they can never take away from you was that knowledge.
So Trisha, I'm curious when you talk about adoption, and Logic kind of brought this up earlier. Mm-hmm. Do you think that child abuse, or I guess what I'll call cross-racial,
they call it transracial.
I don't know what that means, but do you think that
what they call it,
that's worse than any other form of child abuse? And the reason I asked is that growing up, I had a person who was loosely connected to our family and 2 Black parents, but this girl's hair was never done. And she went to the same middle school that I did, and it was all Black kids. And I knew for a fact that it would have been terrible for her to go to school every day because she was going to get roasted. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling my mom, who was white, that my cousin, or whatever we want to call this person, she needed an intervention because I didn't think it was fair that she had to go to school and get roasted every day. Mm-hmm. So my mom, who was white, who had raised help raise my older sisters who are also Black, had taken them to hair salon, started taking my cousin to get her hair done because her mother wouldn't do it. And I remember thinking, okay, you're Black, you understand this. Does that make that different? Does that make that worse? Or is this all just the same? Is all this abuse on the same level?
I think in some respects, if a Black parent neglects their child's hair or how they look, they will hear it from other Black parents, and there's probably something going on financially or some sort of, like, I don't want to say straight to abuse, but there's something else going on in the household, so that we pick up and will intervene in that case. When white parents do that, that's all under the assumption of they don't know how to deal with it. We're not going to investigate further.
Okay.
When Black parents do it, they'll investigate further. Okay. I had a relative who was a foster parent for many years. He and his wife for many years, and they lived down in Compton, and they had plenty of kids that came in and out, and they would remove them, even the ones that they wanted to adopt. They were like, no, you can't adopt them because your income isn't, but it was fine. Their income was enough to have them as foster children coming in and out. But when it was time to adopt, they're like, no. And they were like, we would be fine with not receiving the funds that you get as a foster parent. We just want to adopt that child. It was absolutely no, not. So yeah, but they took care of their kids. I just think it's I don't want to call it hubris, but if you adopt a child from another culture, you should at least have, or race, you should at least have enough respect for that group of people to ensure that you're keeping them connected to that culture. That's one thing I do respect about Angelina Jolie and the kids that she adopted. She still kept them connected, and her daughters, and so their hair looks right all the time. But then you see other people, like even the story that, Precious was talking about, like, oh, I wanted one, and there was nothing in that in terms of, okay, did we reflect about, can we provide this child this? It's no, I just want a baby. I want this baby now. That's shouldn't be the reason or the main impetus for adopting any child. Just that, well, I just want one. So this wasn't your first choice, clearly, because normally the first choice, unfortunately, I shouldn't say healthy white babies are the first choice. You didn't get your healthy white baby, so you're like, well, I'll take one of those.
Yeah.
Like we're not replacements for what you really want. And then it makes me wonder, when you raise them, are you raising them as the replacement that has we don't need to worry about that race stuff with you because you're my replacement for a white baby. So you're just my child, versus ignoring when they grow up. I once went out with a guy, and this is totally related, slightly related. He was adopted and raised by a white family. I used to think that he did performative Blackness to the point that I was like, we can't go out anymore. That what he thought a Black person should behave like, the stereotype, he amped it up to the point that I'm like, I was embarrassed to be around. I'm like, why are you? Well, because I'm hard and all this. And then, yeah, my parents were white. And then I'm thinking, they should have prepared, or did they give him ideas that Black people are like this? So, that's how you're supposed to behave. There's no way to behave that's Black. So I would love the people to realize we don't all act the same way.
Keisha has chimed in, and I really appreciate her comments. She says she is a social worker. She said the system is not set up for Black families to have the opportunity to adopt. The home study process is super subjective, and Black people are judged more harshly.
What's up, Keisha? That's my sister's best friend.
That's right.
She also said oftentimes people want to come in as a savior to save the poor parent, less Black children, or earn their wings to get into heaven because there is a religious place or religious piece to some agencies as well. Absolutely. Yeah. pop culture media and the film industry, you know, they've definitely been accomplices and accessories to this. You know what I'm saying? When we look at how specifically Black mothers have been portrayed. I read something on a meme or something like that, and I felt like it was really funny for the time. It says that Halle Berry has got to be the worst Black mother in movie history. And if you look at the roles, no, look at the roles. This most recent role that she took, what's it called? Bruised or
Yes, it's called Bruised. Yes.
Bruised, right? She's the MMA fighter, horrible mother. She just wasn't a good mom. Point blank. I would hate if she was the mother of my child or if she was my mother. Not good. And then what was the one? Monsters Ball?
Mm-hmm. Losing Isaiah.
Losing Isaiah.
911.
So can we say typecast, everybody?
Yeah.
So yeah. So, but what pop culture media and the film industry doesn't show a really accurate portrayal of is like stuff like wet nurses, Black nannies, you know what I'm saying, who actually took care of the kids that would actually grow up to oppress their children.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, you know, as Trisha said, like, let's look at the foundation of how all this, the foundation is really white people not willing to raise their own children and Black people actually raising, you know, their children and teaching them, you know what I'm saying, a way of life, you know, and a lot of times giving them some decency and making them think twice about the parents that raised them. And why are you treating, you know what I'm saying, you know, the butler and the maid and the nanny and the wet nurse so bad when they treat me so good?
Mm-hmm.
That's the story. When I go around to these plantations, it's hard work. It's hard work doing this historical data gathering, where I go around the country to these plantations, and I know it's hard, and I know a lot of people don't really want to do it because it's hard work. But if you got the stomach and the mind and the heart to do it, and you're not going to grieve and mourn too much, there's a lot of stories that they're never ever going to tell you in the books, or you're never going to hear ear to ear that you got to actually go there. They're going to tell you, and they're going to tell you how great, decent, and spiritual people Black people were to white people and raising their children, even though they knew that they would be raising someone that's going to oppress them.
That's crazy.
That's why they can't tell me nothing, because I know my history, that we can't raise our own children. These are social conditions. These are circumstances. We know how to raise children.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, we know how to raise children better than our oppressors. That's facts. I'm not saying it's a contest. I'm not saying we're superior. I'm just saying this is what the history has told me as I've been doing my research as a historian. So as we move forward, let me go back to my banners real quick. I want to ask this question real quick. And I want us to really think about this. Should we be wary of white people that adopt Black and brown children exclusively?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Precious. Go ahead and kick in, because we need some of your hot Southern hospitality on this one. Go ahead.
Well, I look at this type of situation, I always have mixed feelings about it, because I think I said on one of your posts, or even mine, that we talk about Sandra Bullock and her remarks. And the whole time I was
Thank you.
listening to
Thank you for
her,
reminding me of that. I was trying to remember her name, Sandra.
yeah, Sandra Bullock. I was listening to her the whole time, and I was sitting thinking, you talking about what you're going through when it comes to raising a child who is obviously different from you. You're not understanding what that child is going through, and they have to keep in mind that you're really not. I'm pretty sure by now they know that that's not your real parent, at least biologically. Granted, she's raising you, and I'm pretty sure she's doing what she needs to do. But the thing is, she's so worried about what she's going through and what she has to adjust to, but not doing it for the child. So that's why I've always found those sort of unions kind of cringy at time. I ain't gonna say at time. Most of the time, if not all the time, I find those situations very cringy. But the other side of me is like that. But of course, racism plays a role in it. I was like, if you don't want these white people raising these children in the foster system, what are we doing as a community to get them and raise them ourselves the way that we feel they should be raised as Black children in this country? So that's why I say it's a tough thing to really fight against. But if we're not adopting those children,
I see that's one way to look at it.
But we used to take care of
we
each
normally
other's kids,
do.
but we didn't use adoption and all that. It was just that they moved in and they lived with you.
Yes.
My parents raised 4 other kids other than the 2 that they gave birth, just boys that were in the family. They came to live with us. We didn't go through the whole process of adoption. There were other people in the neighborhood that did the same thing, but something happened now where the state comes in or social workers come in, they remove the kids and then they bring them somewhere else. So they're removed from the community. It would be great to get back to the point where we just took care of each other, that we didn't need the official like adoption name or saying it was adoption. I don't know.
I'm glad you brought that up.
To change that.
My mom had done that for many of my brother friends because their parents was missing in action, like something happened or whatever. So my parents did took them in, and they stayed with them for like 2-3 years until whether the father or the mother, whether they got themselves together, whatever situation they were going through was resolved. They did stay with us. My mom did take care. My parents did take care of them. We did that for I'm gonna say from 97 up to maybe 2003. That little window there, we was having a lot of our friends that unfortunately the Black parents was going through something. We did take them in. There wasn't no social work stuff going on back then. It's so funny you brought that up. You are so right. We don't. I don't see that happen much anymore. And I'm not aware of it.
We had family that, or there were relatives, unfortunately, during crack epidemic, that their parents were strung out on crack. Then my dad and my mom were like, okay, they're staying with us. They stayed a couple of years until mom, usually it was mom, got herself back together. And then they went back to mom, or maybe they would find their dad and then they go to their dad. But it was just like, it was a temporary thing that people used to do to step in and help. But then once, I guess we assumed, oh, well, the state does it or a social worker will just come in and do it. And once the social worker comes in, data is showing that when that happens, they're more likely just to be removed and they're not coming back. And so I am unfortunately very leery of white people that adopt Black and brown kids. And also because of things like, remember that couple that killed all the kids. I mean, I'm probably a suspicious person.
Yes. So, are you talking about that white, the
yes.
2 women couple that adopted?
I think there were like 5 or 6 kids. They just drove
there.
up. And I mean, that's an extreme like example of physically doing that. But I think they're also in many cases doing harm in terms of not preparing them for the reality of being either a Black man or woman. They're not prepared to really prepare them for the best possible outcomes when they're an adult. And raising kids should be more than about just they have enough money or they're part of a certain religion. There's more to raising kids than just.
I want to add on to something real quick because I want to go back to what you just now said. But Precious is right. I can't put my finger on it, but that's how we got down. We got busy like that. And that actually was a low-key problem, you know what I'm saying, in my marriage, because that was just built into my family DNA. Like if someone needed a place to stay, you know what I'm saying? Of course we're gonna make sure things are appropriate and proper, but yeah, man, and I understand what other people in the family and my in-laws were thinking and and whatnot. We got to be careful bringing people in off the street and stuff like that. But I would if I knew someone was struggling, I would bring them in and they could stay in the basement or whatever. You know what I mean? It would be appropriate. It's not like you're gonna be all cohort, just cohort, all up in the house with the children and stuff like that. And I ain't read no background checks or nothing like that. But you might be in the basement, but that's something we did. And there's that age-old joke of Black people claiming other children on their taxes. That happens. That's a fact. I mean,
No
people
comment.
be like that. You know what I mean? And when, to add on to what Trish said, we stopped when social services came in. To add on to what she said, not so much because we were like, yo, they got it, because there was penalties, if we didn't let them have it.
Oh.
Yeah, man. It's called welfare fraud. It's called tax fraud.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they were cracking down on that.
Oh, wow.
That's why people say the war on poverty is really a war on Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were doing at sometimes the bare minimum to survive. And to survive meant to cheat the system. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you hide a family member in a house if you're getting public assistance, if you know you're about to lose it and that's all you got and you're going to be on the street? You know what I mean? So that's that. I mean, that kind of like, this is what we do on Seed Talk. We plant the seeds. Like I'm planting a seed right now because that leads to those predominant referrals to CPS, and which gets referred to those adoption and foster agencies, which extracts Black kids out of the household.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know intimately about this process because I used to be a family preservation therapist for 2.5, 3 years. And what I used to work with FRS, which is Family Reconciliation Services.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the person that comes in before CPS comes in. So they send Logic in. I was working with Grayson and Associates, which is like an independent agency. Mm-hmm. They send me in there so you can get your stuff together to dequalify yourself for CPS. And my role is to come in and say, this is cultural. This is circumstantial. We change the circumstances. Let me coach the family up. Let me provide this family preservation therapy to them, reconciliation services, so CPS won't get involved. Mm-hmm. So I was dealing with a lot of immigrant families who were like, oh, this is how y'all do it in America? Because I just beat their ass. That's how we do it in Africa. That's how we do it in Samoa. We don't do this whole, oh, okay, so you want to take them out on ice cream dates and you want to talk about, family meetings and stuff. Okay, well, we'll do that. Okay. So we can keep our children. This is a bigger issue than a lot of people really understand that we're dealing with. And, you go in and you try to change the circumstances so they can dequalify themselves. You know what I'm saying? But my question is this: how much of is it of a reach if someone says the whole process of the adoption agency, the foster care, extracting Black and brown kids and children from their families, it's just a continuation of the slave trade and human trafficking? How much of a reach is that? Or is it? because just like the human trafficking that was involved in the transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery, or the Ma'afa, or the African Holocaust, it was profitable. They made a lot of money from it. They still do. They built America from it. How much is it of it is a reach to say, if that's the foundation, that there are still ripples of that that are in order and intact institutionally to still make money off of disproportionately extracting Black children from their families to substantiate a system where there always has to be the rich and the poor and us dependent on a system.
I think the comparison is strong when you talk about convict leasing, and I don't know if I talked about that on this program or I just talked about that with you personally, but that actually came after slavery, where they tried to figure out a way to replace it, and so institutions would essentially buy Black bodies from the prison population who committed minor infractions and then send them off to different places to never be heard from again. If you look at the Black codes as a set of arbitrary laws that had a cultural angle in order to basically take an entire culture and make it criminal, then you can look at the qualifications that are used for adoption and say those are new Black codes. And the foster parents and the people who get these children are the new privateers that took the Black bodies during convict leasing. So I actually think that comparison is really close. I think that the difference is that there is a good wrapping on that present, because there's going to be people who benefit from it, and some of them are going to be Black, and they're going to be the poster children for this type of thing, saying, well, look at this person who would have been raised in this other scenario. Look at what might have happened to them. And then we start citing the statistics on single parent homes and prisons and dropout rates. And then we can say, but we can compare them to this other person who made it through our system. And what are the proportions there? Are they more or less likely to be successful in this system? And if the statistics bear out that some of those Black children who are being adopted are faring better than the ones, or being taken out of their home are faring better than the ones that are staying, then there's going to be a great argument for those people saying, actually, no, this is a good thing, even though it does mirror convict leasing. And they won't put it in those terms. They'll just say, well, it's a shame that those, like Precious said, it's a shame these Black people aren't able to be raised by their own community. But as you can see, we saved them. And that's a tough one to get around if the statistics bear it out. I don't know if they do. I don't know that. I just know that, like I was saying, the comparison to convict leasing is really strong because it's the idea of these private institutions and public institutions. Like, for example, in Seattle, you have the Casey family. Casey Family Organization is not a government agency. It's like a nonprofit, right? But obviously they have money in their pockets because the Casey family is very wealthy, and they're involved in child services, etc. Now, if they were to, and I don't know that they do this, but if they were to remove a child from the home they started in and send them to a different family, that different family is now in control of that person's life, the same way that somebody who got arrested for a violation of a Black code ended up on a different plantation. So there's a really direct correlation there. But the Casey family can say afterwards, look at the situation we got them from. This one's better. And that's what makes it difficult, I think, to make that comparison in a serious way.
Okay, that was good. That was real good. I like that. I want to ask y'all another question.
Well, you got to let Trisha and Precious respond to that, because they got stuff to say about it too, for sure. And I want to hear it. So
I do think that it is Keisha, is her name, is saying that it is a direct pipeline. I think the way to destroy a culture is to take its children. When you think about, what was done to the Native American children with boarding schools. This
Yeah.
is an extension of that. Don't even need the boarding school. You just take the child literally and raise them to think in ways, or establish a pattern in which they'll navigate through the world. There's also a lot of money involved in terms of the fees. It's like Precious mentioned, like just paid $25,000. So the fact that they're still paying for essentially Black bodies, removing the children who are, the next generations, removing them and then having them raised outside of their culture, outside of any connection with their community, that's problematic. And that's another method of, well, I guess, meant to destroy us culturally.
Yeah, I think it's really no different than how teachers look at Black children, Black and brown children. Really not much of a difference. Once they detect something is wrong by their own
Metrics.
delusional standards, they get sent to that pipeline. So yeah, I don't think it's really that much of a difference. I really don't.
Yeah. Question I wanted to ask y'all is,
Sorry.
No. That's good. Because Keisha said the foster care system is a direct pipeline to the prison pathway and another way to make money off of Black bodies. That's a breadcrumb. Yeah, that's definitely a breadcrumb. Because I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that unless I got some stats and some anecdotes and some examples to back that up. I know where she's going with that because me being in education for 24 years, I know what that foster care system brings with it. And yeah, my question is this. If we can say that the law enforcement institution that we know of is an extension of the slave patrol. This is a fact. We can look this up. I wonder how much of other agencies and institutions are nothing but an arm and a branch of the same plantation, you know what I'm saying? Manufacturing, economy, and all that. Because a lot of what I see in white parents adopting Black children mirrors what was happening in slavery. Just like what I see, a lot of what's going on with law enforcement, how they stop you, ask you where you're going, this, that, there. I'm not saying I have a problem with us having order, but I'm saying there's direct ties to the slave patrol. That was the first form of law enforcement. So I wonder if that's the same thing with our adoption and foster care system, is the way that children are being moved around, just like our school system is based on, you know what I'm saying? The school system that started off on a plantation. So we're going to have to start reforming a lot of stuff. And I just wonder if the adoption and the foster care system is nothing more than just another arm of that, that plantation institution. Because it just seems like it sets it up.
But you have the answer to your question. You already have the answer to your question here. I mean, this is so cheap. Like, this is where logic goes. And I'm a teacher, so I prepare them. I prepare them in my way. I send them, and then Bobby puts them in there, and like we all play our role in the system. That's yes, of course. Like yes, of course.
Oh wow! I wasn't even going there.
Damn. But it would have got there. But it would have got there. But it would have got there. But it would have arrived there.
I'm just trying to figure out how Trisha got left out of this because she's in education too.
He doesn't lead with that.
And I spent time in prison management or detention management. So I was the living school to prison pipeline. Or an embodiment of it.
And just we'll find out. Precious got her role. I don't even know like exactly what it is yet, but we're all in this. We're all in it.
Yeah, the benevolent version of
We're
being
all
in
in
it.
So
Yeah.
we're all in it.
I'm
All
not
right.
sure if I'm the twig or the leaf though.
All right. Great segue, jerk. Give it up for Bobby. All right. So what's the plan of action then, man? Like, if we're all in this and I'm setting people up, I'm setting Bobby up. I'm security for Bobby. God dang it.
You're preparing them. Yeah. Yeah.
But if I really wanted to adopt a child right now, could I though? I wonder.
Probably.
Bobby, tell your story. You're adopting right now.
I'm doing that thing that we talked about earlier, just with providing assistance to people in our family that need help. And so I have a person that has a room at my house now that didn't start there. And a lot of the conversation that we had before that happened was about what could happen if there was no intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say that if we know what we know about what happens to people when they enter these systems, and we're going to have seed talk and we're going to discuss the evils of it, then on some level, we also need to be willing to make the personal sacrifices and help each other. And I am always on here talking about it starts in the home. And so I had an opportunity to stand on it, as they say, to be about it. And I was never going to run from that. So I'll just leave it at that. I think we all have an opportunity at some point in our lives, probably, to give somebody a helping hand that needs help with probably the hardest challenge that exists, which is to raise another human being, to prepare somebody else for the world. And so now I've taken that up voluntarily. And I think that the only question that I asked the person that trusted me enough to assist them was, do you think that the situation is better here or there? And they said, I think it would be better with you. And I said, I agree. So that's all that needs to be said. And that takes a certain amount of courage, by the way. I think that a lot of times we demonize people for saying that they need help with something like that because it's so intimate and so personal. But the amount of personal sacrifice that that person is making should not be ignored. Because think about what you're doing to your ego when you're saying, I'm going to let somebody take my place for a second. Because you know it's best for that person that you love. That's tough. You know, that's hard. So I want to applaud everybody out there who has enough love, has a level of love that's so high they're willing to admit that maybe at this moment, for this moment in time, I'm not the best person to bring up this child.
That's your plan of action. That's good. I'll go next, man. I just think that in every community we should have a network of homes that are safe places that you know, kind of like, you know, the Green Book. You know, I have a couple copies around, and they were reprinted. I got it from Harry Beecher Stowehouse. I actually like the movie too, even though it was kind of cheesy. But anyways, just neither here or there. But kind of like the Green Book, we have a network of safe homes in the Black community where if people need to find refuge, that need to clean themselves up, that need help and support, that need foster or adoption care, that you keep your home ready. You're ready. And that's the plan of action. And the reality of it is a lot of too many of our homes, I'm not going to say a lot, too many of our homes, that could be two. Too many of our homes are not ready to foster and adopt, you know what I'm saying, someone that looks like them that could promote the success of our community. So prepare your home to be ready to adopt and support, you know, someone that looks like you. That's a part of your extended family. That's my plan of action. Precious, Trisha.
I guess I'll go. But yes, we definitely need to. I honestly feel with the Black community, at least in the last several years, I felt it kind of gets overlooked a lot when it comes to children and how many we actually have in there. So I think we also should be in mind of those who do. Like, if we do know a Black child that's a foster child, whether with a Black parent or a white parent, you should try to be part of that child's community as well. I think that's something, even with myself, who had classmates who were foster children, that's something now reflecting back. I'm like, I wish I knew more of what that came about. Like, if I knew what I knew today, I'm pretty sure we probably could have made better lives. But not saying that they turned out bad, because they turned out quite well, but I'm pretty sure that still left a profound effect on them throughout their lives. So I think we also need to keep in mind of that. And as I mentioned earlier, if we don't want other races raising our children, we may want to think, what can we do to help to get those children out? Because I've always felt Black children get picked last, and I never liked that notion. Like we're like the bottom of the barrel when we're not. So that's another thing I was thinking about. So that was one question I wish I had thought of it, but I know we're wrapping up. But I've always wondered what we thought when we see Black parents adopt white children.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna lie, I would look at that kind of sideways too, because I've always felt with all these Black children we have. But that's just me thinking. I feel that as much as Black children get picked over a lot, I said my first, if I had to do it, if I could, I would like to have a Black child, because it's easier to that child to relate. It's easy for me to teach, whether it's about their hair or how the world operates, the way they think. I think it'd just be so much convenient for them. But that's just my personal thing. But yes, I think us as a Black community, I think we should look into that. I think I would still say that's one of the most overlooked things. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah.
What are you about to say, Bobby?
Hey, that's a part two, though. That's a part two, because
part two. Okay.
No,
okay, my bad.
No, what I was gonna say is that's a part two, because I never really thought about. I don't think I've ever. Man, I'm trying to think of a Black couple who adopted a white kid. Let me think about that. That'll be a part two. That'll be a good part two. What you think, Trish?
I think, well, first, developing a strategic intervention plan. So before it gets to the state that children are being taken out of the home, I think particularly for Black parents, we need to learn what can have your child removed from the home, particularly in terms of corporal punishment. So we need to have open discussions about how far is too far, because even some of the threats that I've heard other Black parents, and I will go and tell them that, you really shouldn't be saying stuff like this in public, because somebody else can hear, and next thing you know, CPS is at your house. And just knowing what the procedures are to have your child removed out of the home. And also, if you find yourself resorting to that, getting some therapy and intervention early on. So working on your own issues, because usually it's because you're frustrated or something else is going on with you that you'll escalate it to that point. And I know, oftentimes we talk about the fact that I guess we kind of make jokes about it too as well. Remember that the majority of social workers are white women. White women don't necessarily do that with their kids. And we can point and joke about the fact that, they let their kids do whatever the heck they want. Okay, but they're the social workers. So if it gets escalated to one of them, you're probably going to have a difficult time having your child returned to your home. Be that safe place, like Logic was speaking. If you find yourself that you have the capability to be the safe place, or even the safe space for a parent to talk to before they escalate, talk to other kids when you see things go, build those relationships, particularly with foster kids, especially as they're close to aging out, because I know that they kind of just get cut and lost. And that's important as an intervention strategy, because eventually, they may become parents, and they could be those same parents that are having their children removed from their home. But yeah, stop threatening to beat the living bleep out of your kids in public because that can get you.
Oh, I'm a civilian. I'm a mandatory reporter.
I know. Me too.
You know what? That remind me of, you know what? This remind me of the TikTok dude. This man who's a news reporter. He like made little jokes about kids acting up in the church, and you have to take it to the bathroom, show them Jesus. It was a very not literally. It was like a little spotty, but it was. I have to say, it actually was funny.
You can't say that in 2021.
He was like literally doing it, but he do it like in a newscast, like this just in at 9 o'clock. It was like real funny, though.
And see, that's the thing. So as like Black people, we can laugh about this kind of stuff, but I've been around white people who don't think that's funny, and they will be the first one running on the phone that I heard them joking about, and then CPS is at your house. So there's like this cultural disconnect. Maybe they should be training for social workers, the predominantly white social workers as well, to know how maybe to discern when Black people are joking versus when we're actually doing these things.
Nah,
That is a different sense of humor, maybe.
They know when we joking because they laughing with us when we laughing at Bernie Mac's joke, beat him to the white meat. They know when we joking, but they also know how to fill out that paperwork too. So
yeah,
why Public Enemy said don't trust them. Yeah. All right, y'all. Seed Talk. Another great episode. I thought it was really great and informative and whatnot. We're going to check you out next week. We're going to rebroadcast this one. We're probably going to rebroadcast this one on Friday and whatnot. Shout out to One Institution. All right, we out.
Ariana, come say hi.